Now let me mention first off, I emailed you something before class, or really right as class was starting. But in this chapter, all they do is they keep making changes to route config. Literally, that's what the whole chapter is about. And they explain how you can make changes. So I sent you a few things, such as, if I can find it. There it is. Every one of the route configs that they put in, I saved them for you. All right, you might say, well, why would you do that? Because I was working my way around them, and I was trying to look at the difference between them. All right. So for each one of these, I've got a little comment there that has the way it is and the page it was on, etc. But there must be close to 20 of them. Could be more. I don't know. The other two things, or two or three things that I sent you, is I sent you a couple of articles that I found that I thought at least were pretty good. All right. And I'm not going to go over any of them right now. But one of them is called, there's two ways that you can do routing. All right. You can do what's called convention routing, or you can do what's called attribute routing. The author likes convention routing. The author doesn't like attribute routing. So this chapter is about 45 pages, and about 40 of those pages are on convention routing, and about 5 of the pages are on attribute routing. But I figured so you could at least get the flavor of each. I found that article, and you've got that sent to you. All right. I also found this article, which I thought was good, and it basically comes in and it tries to explain routing basics as though you know absolutely nothing about them. All right, so I gave you that. Also, tomorrow, when we get into Chapter 16, toward the end of the chapter, the author talks about areas. So I found this article on areas. As always, when you go through this stuff, and I didn't use it for any of them, but docs.microsoft.com is really your best resource. But a lot of times when you read the stuff that's in there, it's so dry. It's got a lot of words in it that don't say very much, and sometimes there are examples and they just are not good. So I tried to come up with better examples. All right. So, again, I'm at the beginning of Chapter 15 on page 369. Okay, this, like I said, this is a long chapter. This is one of the longer chapters in this book. All right. One of the ways that web forms changed from ASP.NET MVC, which is what we're doing, all right, is the system. The people who created this decided that what they were going to do was a total separation of concerns. You know what that is now. The model versus the view versus the controller. All right? And the author says, before the introduction of the MVC framework, ASP.NET assumed a direct relationship between the URL and the files that were on the disk. In other words, there really was no controller portion. You click something and you got it. Type of thing. Well, that has changed now. And the author said that worked fine for web forms, but it really doesn't make any sense in MVC applications because it says requests are processed by action methods in controller classes. Again, you should know that already. All right. So to handle this, as it says, ASP.NET uses the routing system. All right. So in this chapter, as it says, they're going to talk about why, what the routing system is, and they mention here in this bulletized list that you see on the first page, it says the routing system has two basic functions: to examine the incoming URL and figure out the controller that should handle it, and to generate the outgoing URL. So again, look on the screen here at these 2 bullet points. This chapter is about the first bullet point. The next chapter, most of it, is about the second bullet point. All right? So you can see that working with controllers and working with routing is a fairly complex subject. I started to go through some of the unit tests and some of the stuff that was in there, and I'm like, I actually think you guys could do all of them, but I had no idea what you would learn by going through them. All right, and I didn't want it to be a waste of your time. So as it says, in this chapter, the author will focus on defining routes and using them to process incoming URLs. So notice, this is the key point. It says there are two ways to do this: convention-based routing and attribute routing. So as I already mentioned, he will spend about 80% plus of the chapter going over convention-based routing, and the last 10 to 20% going over attribute-based routing. He doesn't like attribute-based routing, and the main reason he doesn't is he thinks it breaks that separation of concerns idea. All right? Again, we'll get to that in just a little bit. So as it says, in the next chapter then, chapter 16, which I hope to be able to go over tomorrow, it says the author will show you how to use the same routes to generate outgoing URLs. All right. So now I would like you to do this. So in other words, I would like you to go in and start to create. He creates this empty project, and he calls the project URLs and routes. In fact, I don't know if it'll let me do this or not, but I'm going to come in here. I am going to close this. All right, I'm going to get rid of my file that was in this hello thing. So now I think I've got just the regular stuff, so to speak. And I'm going to see if it will let me rename this. And I'll just work with this. Whoops. There. All right. So he wants you to create a brand new empty MVC project that's called URLs and routes. All right. Now, what I'm hoping you will do, so you can, ideally get something out of these chapters, is that when he puts something in, you'll put it in. All right. And we'll see. Like I said, there's tons of stuff in this chapter, tons of changes the author makes throughout the chapter. But again, if you look up on the screen, the majority of these changes that he has you make are in your route config file. Right now, we've done very little with this route config file. Okay, you've seen this before. All right, I might have even gone like this so you can see all of it. But other than that, you haven't done very much at all with this file. Okay, we will do a lot in this chapter. All right. And again, if the author says put in this code on many of those occasions, that's in the file I gave you. You may still have to type in some of your own code. All right? But the idea is, in these 2 or 3 chapters, you're going to learn what the author can spit at you as far as controllers go. All right? Then, in the next few chapters, the author is going to talk to you about views. So you'll have the controller and the view, the C and the V of MVC. Models will be discussed here and there as he goes through the rest of the book. All right. So we've got that. I'm going to just leave that open. It really and truly does not matter. So I made the sample project, empty template, choosing MVC. So we've done all that. All right. Now, we don't have to do this thing with mock, because we're not going to be doing the unit tests. All right. If you do want to do the unit tests on your own, then you do have to go in there and you have to create a unit test folder, and you have to put this in. But I'm not going to do that. All right. So, as the author says, to demonstrate the routing feature, I'm going to add some simple controllers to the example app. Okay. I only care about the way the URLs are interpreted in order for them to call action methods, so the view models that are going to be used are string values. In other words, the author tried to make this about as simple as possible. So the first thing he does is he comes in and he creates an empty home controller. All right. By now, this should be second nature to you. So I'll do the same. Now he's going to have you change the guts, so to speak, of this. All right, so let's first take a look at what he's going to have you do. Some of the stuff, I mean, this author, if you haven't noticed it, in very many ways has the crawl, walk, run mentality. And what I mean is he'll oftentimes start by showing you something, and it's almost like, this is just stupid, it's so simple. Then by the time he gets to the hard stuff, it's like, wow, this is really hard. All right. I wish he'd spend more time in the middle, but he doesn't. So what he wants us to do is to come in here. If you look on the screen, all right. So in here, what do we have? Well, we're going to have action result index. That's all we want to put in here. So we want to take the index that's in there, and we want to replace it with the index file that is on the top of page 372. All right, so I want to remove this and replace it with this. Now, why? Okay, we'll take a look at what's in here. If you notice, he's got 3 lines in here. He's setting 2 view bag properties. He's setting the name of the controller to the name of the controller. He's setting the name of the method to the method. Does all that make sense? Yes? All right. This is new. Notice what he's returning. He's returning action name. We're going to create 1 or 2 more controllers that are going to look almost exactly like this one, except the name of the controller will be different. So instead of being home controller, it'll be like products controller or shop controller. Every one of those is going to create, and is going to say this: return view action name. So what's going to happen is we're going to have one method that, or I'm sorry, one view that we create that's going to be able to service several controllers. We've never done anything like that before. We will have one view that we will create, and we're taking a break, all right? And that one view will service several different controllers. All right. So that was the first thing that we wanted to do. Next thing we want to do, we want to create another controller. Again, it will be empty. Okay. And this one is supposed to be called customer controller. All right. We again want to replace the guts or the index method with the index method shown in your book. All right, and actually I guess there's 2 of them in here. In about the middle of page 372. So put these in. All right, so we now have our index. This looks virtually identical to the one we just did for the home controller, except the name of the controller is different. But the name of the action and the name of the view are the same thing. All right. Finally, we want to come in and we want to create 1 more controller. So again, right mouse click, add controller. It again will be empty. And this one is called, I believe it's admin controller. Okay. And again, I'm going to come into the admin controller. I'm going to grab it right from the bottom of page 372. Grab those 5 or 6 lines, copy them to the clipboard, and replace this with those lines. So right now we've got 3 different controllers. We started with a home controller, then we added a customer controller, and now we've added an admin controller. Right now, nothing is going to happen if we run the program, rather, because we don't have any views. In the past, when we did this, all right, you notice we've got an admin, a customer, and a home. You know that. You know that that happens. But in the past, we'd go in there, we'd right mouse click on here, and we'd choose add view, etc. We'd go through all that stuff. We're not doing that. All right, I'm just going to cancel out of there with that. All right, so it says I specified action name in all three of these, okay, which allows me to define one view that will be used by all applications. Now, why that's important, there's a couple reasons, but please look up on the screen. What we need to do, because this was an empty project, is under views. Notice we don't have a shared folder. See that? We need one. So right mouse click on views, choose add, choose new folder. Right mouse click on views, choose add and new folder. Call it shared with a capital S. All right, so we've got shared right there. It's the first thing. Then next, we want to create a new view inside of there that's called actionname.cshtml. All right. So I'm going to right mouse click in here, choose add, choose view. All right. And what was it? It's called action name. Don't believe we'll have to set anything else. I don't remember if they said to use a layout page or to not use a layout page. Well, they've got here layout equal no. So let's not even have a layout page. So click right there. So all I've got in here is action name and empty without model. It's in the shared folder. It's going to be called actionname.cshtml. Everybody cool with that? All right, so I'm clicking add. This should be virtually empty. All right, so make me a layer. So you got the layout equal null. That's what we wanted. In the guts of this, so we've got all this stuff that's here, but in the body, we want to add these two div lines. That's it. So go into the body, all right, and add those two div lines. Right now, there's just, I believe it's an empty div in here. It is. So we want to replace that with these two div lines. Okay? Now, what is cool, so to speak, about this is if we run this, okay, we should be able to navigate over to any of the controllers, and they'll all basically say the same thing. But again, the important part is they are all sharing the same method, the same. It's not an index method. It's called action name. All right. Now, the author has talked about this before. We're going to go just this little bit that's here, and then we're taking a break. All right. So, the author says, as I explained in part 1 of the book, Visual Studio will try to figure out, it'll try to run from wherever you currently are. But we don't want that. Okay? So it says this becomes annoying. So what we want to do is we want to come into our project and again click on Project. I'm sorry, View. Wait, one more time. Project. And second one from the bottom has got the name of your project and it says Properties. So if you click on Project in the menu and you go down second from the bottom, if you called yours, as I showed you, URLs and routes, it'll say URLs and routes properties. If you click right there, all right, yours may not be here, it might be up here, it doesn't matter. All right. But what we are to do then, we want to switch to the web tab and check the specific page option. So click on the web tab, and where it says, now says current page, make it specific page. And if you do that, you don't have to set a page. That's all you do. So I changed it from current page to specific page. Now I can close this. All right. And I'm going to do a file, save all. All right. and I'm going to run the program. Now what it should be doing is it should bring up the home page, and it should be running that index file under home, which basically told it to call action name. Does that make sense? All right. If this works, oops, delete that. There. The controller is home, the action is index. Everybody see this? Now look, if I change this to admin, the controller is admin, the action is index. If I change it to customer, the controller is customer, the action is index. The takeaway from here is we are using the same method, that's that action name method that we wrote in this, which is, I'm sorry, that we're using the same view, all right, that action name view for all three methods. Why is that important? Well, this just came to mind. Maybe this is a crummy example, but it's the one I'm going to use anyway. Let's suppose that rather than a 2-year, this is a 4-year institution. So you got freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior. So let's assume we had 4 different controllers. A freshman controller, a sophomore controller, a junior controller, and a senior controller. But when any one of them came up, we wanted the same thing to happen. We could do this kind of an operation then. All right? So again, the idea is we are using one shared view to service the index call from 3 different controllers. Does that make sense? Is there anyone that does not make sense to? All right, it is 1:34. Let's come back, please, at 1:50.